And before I start this video, what I'd like to just demonstrate to you is how this system works very simply. Here we have a lever drum at the signal box which is attached to the lever, and we have a continuous wire system. So in effect, you can't push a wire without it bending, unlike rodding, which you can push and pull. So you have a continuous wire system that goes out from the lever through some compensators that you'll see in the video, the line side wire run you'll also see in the video, around a point operating box that moves the point you'll see in the video, back through the compensators and back to the lever. Now there is some good bits of information out there that highlights this. I mean, this is one I drafted for part of my paperwork for the actual points themselves. It documents quite a lot of the mechanisms, how it all works. And we've been very fortunate, very lucky to have some good examples provided by Pulley Steam Railway, Victorian Railways and colleagues up and down the country who've managed to get hold of the original paperwork and drawings and plans to help us out with this. This is some of the Victorian Railways paperwork. It actually goes into great detail on how to set the system up. Again, it's very simple. There's not much to actually put this down. And this is something the Pulley Steam Railway gentleman I was chatting to said to me. He says, you'll not go wrong with it because you'll find out very quickly how it works and where things can go wrong. So there's only a few pages of information here. I'm just trying to get through to the diagrams, which are the best bit. I think I need to get near now. So a few pages of information on the wire leads, divided signalling, etc. There are a lot of safety features that are added to this. There's even a brake wire detection system that prevents you getting your key lock out on your key staff or token staff. That's also included in this booklet. There is some Westinghouse booklets on its setup because a lot of this was sold all over the world and is still in use in quite a lot of hot foreign countries, even down to the wire pulleys, how to double end work a set of points, the various linkages, most of which barrow hill frame that we have on display that you'll see in the video use, and also the different types of point operating boxes. Now, our type H machine is very similar to this, though when I mentioned the egg-shaped drive mechanism, that's the piece I'm on about there, but it's slightly more concave than this. This has two lost motion lugs on it. This is more like our one. So we have this egg-shaped affair in the background. And there are differences in those machines as well that you'll see in the video. You'll also see a description of compensating adjusters as well. One other thing I will mention as well, there's a lot of literature out there, if you can look for it. This is a German book, Mechanische Stellwerk, which is on the German system, which is, again, the same system, still used a lot in Germany and around Europe, and the different versions of little bits and pieces of that. This has been a great reference book. This is my first book that I found before I found any of the Victorian Railways books on this. It's Victoria State in Australia, and Pulley Steam Railway has an example of these in use. So you'll see these in the video. This is our turnover lever frame at Roseley South signal box, which is a display frame but also does actually work. And that's why we have this sealed off area here. The public can go into this area and operations on this side. The frame is locked off the single line key, which releases lever 1. Lever 1 releases the frame locking. The locking is standard locking in trays behind the frame, and these are driven off reducing arms, which I call the bananas. Some people call, I can't remember the name of it now, it's the boomerang, basically. So when you operate the catch handle, you operate that drive pin there, forwards and backwards. This one won't move because it's actually locked into the lock at the time. But as you can appreciate, squeezing the catch handle operates the mechanism which disengages the locking or engages the locking. Lever frame, as you can appreciate, our badges are double-sided. And you'll see that in a minute why when I operate the demonstration lever. There's a reason for that. You'll notice the height of the actual levers from the pivot to here is only around 2.5 foot. Now that's quite short, but you get round that by the fact that it has an amazing amount of torque just by operating the fixed chains. In this case here, what we have is our chains that operate our signalling outside. Over there at the point ends is a double wire system. So if we, as you can appreciate, if we pull a wire, we can't push a wire, the wire will bend. So we have to pull both ways. So if we're operating a point normal, we pull it. If we're operating a point reverse, we pull it with the other wire. And those wires are continuous between the point end and the lever, and they are bolted onto U-bolts on the back of the frame. So when you operate a lever, it will operate the wire one way and operate the wire in the other way as well. Our frame here at Roseley is only a small demonstration, so we have 2 mainline points and we have 2 yard points as well, and then we have a single signal which is just outside. Showing our diagram up here which Tim Warner kindly drew for us. So we have our mainline points 3 and 6, and we have our track point 7, which is sprung one way because the points are quite a distance apart, so you can actually trail in. And we also have our head shunt points number 4, our single signal, which is number 10 outside. This frame itself is not the full frame. This frame came from Barrow Hill, and unfortunately we only gained half of the frame. We know where the rest of the frame is, but it didn't come with its bed casting. We got the legs, the feet, the main bodies, all the wheels and the levers, but we didn't get the main casting, so we've had to make these two ourselves. It does lend you a little bit of ease of building because it's not a great deal of work and everything's above the floor. And one of the benefits is you can unbolt these just with 2 bolts and you're away. So you can move things around. They are designed to sit into a bit of a cast frame, as you can appreciate from this little gap you can see here. Now again, not all the levers are exactly the same. So what we think we've ended up with here is some BR levers and some LMS levers, because there are subtle differences to the centre spacings between the 4.5 inch and the 5 inches, which we've noticed, and also subtle differences to some of the handles, which we've noticed. As you can appreciate, so we think some things have been made out of standard levers in the past to get things working. Bear in mind, it was quite a large frame at Barrow Hill South when it was originally in use. This lever has been kept to the side here as a demonstration lever. It works a small ground signal outside so that people can actually have a feel of how the system works. And what you'll notice straight away, the size of the lever is quite small. You have a standard mount foot casting at the bottom. On top of that should be a piece of C-section tube that holds all the various segments of the frame together. Then you have the main casting, the main support, the drive wheel around which the wires are attached. You have the spring block which operates the mechanism in and out to actually disengage from the stops, normal and reverse. And you'll notice the lever badges are doubled up. You have one on the reverse side and one on the normal side. And the reason for that is when you put these over, you then have the badge on the opposite side facing again. Our line side wires, as you've noticed, as I just mentioned, we actually use solid wire instead of stranded wire to prevent stretching, and these work quite well. We've made pulley stakes the same as normal out of bits of old channel rodding, and we've marked these up obviously yellow because of the line side. But wire runs itself, very little stretch in them. In Germany they do have covers over these to keep the snow out of them and the leaves, etc. But we're not bothered with that here. We don't get much snow when it's like a foot off the ground anyway, so you can keep them clear better that way. But yes, in Germany everything's boxed in, and even in the early days of the Midland and the LMS, these types of lever frames, their wire runs were boxed in. That was one of the pros and cons of it. The pros that you could box everything in, and some good pictures around the Buxton area of the original Buxton box with the wire runs boxed in as well. These are the ex-Sandy balancing lever weights, and what these do is that they keep tension on the wires on long runs. Now we have a short runs here at Roseley, just down there, but we've added them into the main runs just for the purpose of displaying the item of equipment as it was when it was actually used with these type of lever frame. And again, what you have, as everything, is a pair of wires. So you have a pull wire for going normal, you have a pull wire for going reverse, you have a pair of weights. The pair of weights maintain a certain amount of tension on the draft wheels at the back, which are attached to this large metal frame to stop it moving. and the wires from the signal box come round the draft wheels, through the carrying wheels and out. The two weights themselves are locked together by means of a clutch, and again it's just two V blocks onto this central pole. As long as the weights are in adjustment with each other, so the wires are parallel to each other, these two V blocks will be level. When you start to get one of the wires going out of adjustment to the other, that V block will tilt, it will jam onto this central shaft and lock these two weights together. And at that point, both weights act together as one, so you can't end up with an imbalance in the wires. Now, when it's very cold, these will level out again. At the moment, it's very warm, so as you can imagine, one wire's expanded more than the other. That'll be the wire that's in pull at the moment to keep the points operating that particular way. This is our original V block here, and there's just pins in. They can't really come out because they're trapped in against each other. And this is our replica V block here on the one that was missing. Now, these weights themselves, these are not the original weights. I'll show you the original weights in a minute. The original weights are twice as heavy as these. And you have saddle weights which go onto the bars and jockey weights which go onto the top of them. These are some of the original weights, as I mentioned, that came with the Sandy weight adjusters. This big heavy weight at the bottom here, this is a 100 pound weight, and this is our saddle weight. The bars go through the centre of that, and above that is a jockey weight, a smaller 50 pound weight, and that can sit on top to give you an extra pull on the weights if you need it. And these are just on display now. We don't need this much weight outside. We've only got a very short wire run, but you can, as you can appreciate, in countries far, far away where it's very, very warm and you've got 3/4 of a mile to a mile, kilometre type wire runs, you can add these extra weights on in the very hot conditions to keep the weights balanced. We also have some of the original adjusters just here on display. There's two types. There's a turnbuckle tube and there's just threaded adjusters, and we've put most of these back into the runs outside, so we've always got adjustment everywhere we need it. One other thing that we've copied here that we spotted works quite a lot in Germany. As you can appreciate, where the wires come down through the floor of the lever frame, they do have a tendency to rub on the joists, etc. So what we've put in here is some guide drive shafts, and these are free floating wheels that the wires pull against just to keep them off the timbers upstairs and keep them in line with the frame upstairs itself. And again, the output side has all the adjusters in it as well, down to our lead off wheels on our lead off bench that goes outside to our weights. This is one of the newer point operating boxes. As you can see, the main drive rod is held on by a bolt through which a split pin goes. This in this case is driving facing point lock at the same time, so we have some lost motion in this. Now, the actual mechanism itself, again, is a wire around a wheel. The wire is fixed, so as the wire comes round, it goes into the back of this, what I call the dog clutch, and the other wire comes round into the back of the other side of the dog clutch, and they are actually soldered in there, like hard soldered in there. That's how the original ones were done. The other versions are bolted in, these are soldered in, and this clutch itself is sprung loaded, so should any of the wires break, the clutch pops out, and as it pops out, it jams on some blocks here which are set into the casting. Now, this seems to be a design flaw in the early ones, because a lot of the castings, we actually have one of the castings that's broke off there, so it seems like at some point this is actually sprung and jammed on one of its castings back in its old life at British Rail. The main drive rod itself comes off the bottom of this wheel via almost an egg-shaped escapement. I'll put a picture of that up now. So as you can see, the egg-shaped escapement actually kicks the drive rod, and the drive rod itself is adjustable, much like a slipper on a crank. You can undo the locking nuts, undo the main nuts, and you can push this in and out to give the drive. The drive is just sat right next to the point there itself. So you have some lost motion to unlock the points with to start with, then drive, then relock. Hence why all our points lock both ways, even in the trailing, because this is how the machine works. Wires have come out, our stranded wire. We've put adjusters in everywhere, so we can get around problems with loose wires, etc. But to be honest with you, it's a fixed wire system, it's quite good. They recommend that, this is Westinghouse in its original booklet, that you use galvanised farming wire, not signal wire, because signal wire is stretchy. That's actually in the original booklet, that is. The point operating boxes, you may have noticed, have several apertures for the wires to come in at all different angles. So you can set them so the wires come up across track or line side, and that's part of the original mechanism as well. Now here we are at the other type of point operating box. Now this point operating box isn't working in FPL as such, but it does have lost motion on it through this mechanism here I'm just pointing at. Standard same operating box, apertures come in at all angles, a cast box on the outside, an operating wheel inside. Again, the wires that come in go round and are fixed onto the central hub this time. This is a slight difference. Likewise, the other wire that comes in from the other side is fixed onto the central hub as well. What you have on this type of operating box, you don't have a spring-loaded clutch as such, but you do have some spring-loaded pins. You can just see here, there's one just there. As you can see, the wire actually goes through the centre of that pin. Now what happens is, should the wire break, this pin, which is held in by a spring, pops out and fouls the drive studs as part of the casting here. So again, should a wire break, it will hold itself. Because what you don't want, if you think about the system, it's a continuous wire system. One wire is permanently in tension, one wire is always slack. So the wire that's in tension has the likelihood to spring off the points. So you want to be able to arrest that by jamming it, and that's what that does, the spring-loaded affair. Again, same as the other one, the other type, like a dog clutch. This is a spring clutch that pops out. There's two of these. Now then, going to the mechanism itself, again, the adjustable throw bar, same as the slipper on a crank, on a set of points. What you have, when you move these points over, you engage this drive stud into this aperture here. And as it goes across, you have some lost motion to start with till it hits this point here. Once it hits this point here, it forces this mechanism across. As it forces this mechanism across, of course the wheel is turning, the second drive stud goes into the second aperture and kicks that across firmly. The last thing that happens is this second drive stud here is lost in its lost motion across this face here, and I can show you that in the video. But it's quite easy to see. So again, you've got some lost motion. If you wanted to drive an FPL, you could. There's ways of doing that, but the other box is more suited to that.
Go normal. Go normal, yeah. Go reverse. Go reverse.